You want to learn about pollinators? I do too. Let's go. You want to learn about gardening for pollinators? Let's do it. Let's help the environment. Let's help insects. Let's get this done. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I am an undergraduate at this College of Environmental Science and Forestry in SUNY. I've been studying botany, ecology, forestry, a little bit of geology, and gardening on my own for about 8 years, plus going to college for it, and occasionally high school. High school sucked. Anyway, any images in this slide are from being under Creative Commons. Please don't sue me. Let's go. Let's get this started. So what do you know about our local pollinators? Well, it's not just the bees, like this beautiful bumblebee right here. We have many other kinds. We will be focusing on our native pollinators, not honeybees. Honeybees are actually livestock. So, and there's a massive industry devoted to supporting them. So we don't really need to help them that much. Maybe in Europe because they're native there, but not here. Anyway, anything you do is going to help out honeybees anyway because they're generalists and they can pollinate almost any kind of flower. So what do we have? We got wasps, we got bees, we got certain orders of flies like syrphid flies. We have moths, butterflies, hummingbirds, beetles. We have many, many different kinds of pollinators. Let's take a look at some of them. Now, many of them are specialists in different ways, especially in the bee group. For example, we got the squash bee, right? We got the squash bee over here. And he likes to pollinate cucurbits, so pumpkins, zucchini, squashes, of course, like in the name, who would have thought, and almost nothing else. And he's a solitary guy. He likes to spend his time in a hole in the ground, much like myself. We also have hoverflies, or bee flies, as they're called. They do quite a bit of pollinating too. We have parasitoid wasps and predatory wasps. And they are very important, even though they may look scary. Parasitoid wasps are very, very tiny, and most other wasps aren't going to hurt you too much, except for yellow jackets. And they are predators on a lot of pests. And they're responsible for keeping your crops from being completely overrun. So those adults, they need something to fuel up in between hunting food for their larvae, between capturing some poor caterpillar or aphid and feeding it to their eggs and sealing up a hole. They need a good flower to nectar on. And that's where they come in as pollinators. We also have different kinds of bees. We have carpenter bees. We have this mega child bee, which is a leafcutter bee, I believe. We have mason bees. We have sweat bees. We have many different kinds of bees. We have hummingbird moths, which fly just like hummingbirds. They're really, really cool. We have many other kinds of moths, which do pollination at night usually, except for this guy for some reason. We got, of course, the ruby-throated hummingbird. We have many butterflies and skippers, like, of course, the monarch. Everyone knows the monarch. And beetles and many other types of pollinators. Well, they're not pictured because I just didn't have room for like 600 different species on this slide. So, what do pollinators need? Well, the adults need nectar pollen all throughout their life cycle, which is usually all season long. And this is well represented by this orange butterfly milkweed here, which is a great source of nectar. They need food for larvae, so they need that comes in different forms. Bees usually feed their larvae with pollen and nectar and stuff like that. You know the drill. Wasps, on the other hand, they hunt the corpses, hunt other creatures and bring their corpses and feed them to their young, which is pretty metal. just like this wasp is doing right here. He's tackling this poor caterpillar, and he's going to stuff him in the hole in the ground, and then the female wasp is going to lay her eggs in that hole, and it's going to seal up, and the larvae will slowly eat that caterpillar, and then eventually return to wasps. And then, of course, they need a place to build nests. So a lot of bees nest in holes in the ground. So you want to leave like a bare patch of ground for them. And some like to nest in sticks and bits of wood and bamboo and little hollow tubes like this thing here. Like this mason bee right here has built a nest inside this like paper straw tube thing. So we're going to go over each one of these things. Food for adults nectar. So this is why native plants are really, 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 really important for pollinator gardens. Most insects are specialists. They are looking for a specific suite of chemical signatures in the nectar, pollen, or tissues of the plant. If it does not match, they are not going to bother with that plant, with the exception of a few types of generalist species. A lot of times the insect can't even process the specific pattern of amino acids or whatever in the nectar or pollen of some alien plant from your Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever department store you get that trash alien plant from. So generally don't choose cultivars, that thing that says like, I don't know, Amaryllis, Emerald Glow, or whatever, what have you. Even native cultivars, purple coneflower are getting pretty popular these days. Try not to do that because there's a whole pattern of infrared wavelength color patterns on these flowers. And they're visible only to bees. They're not visible to us. But when we mess with the genetics of the plant and create a cultivar, we are messing with that pattern. We're completely eliminating the runway landing lights, so to speak, for the pollinators, the signals that they're looking for that say, hey, here's where you can get your food. So which plants should you grow? You'd want a mix of species for overlapping blooms because some plants are going to come in and bloom and some plants are going to go out of bloom. And you want a bunch of plants that have overlapping blooms. So something's blooming all the time. And so all the pollinators have something to eat most of the time. And generally that means you're going to have to plant, especially when you have a full sun garden, you're going to have to plant some kind of native shrub nearby, like serviceberry, American plum, maybe a viburnum, maybe a wild hydrangea, not the cultivar, again, the straight version. And the especially queen bumblebees, they really need that spring nectar source, and there's not a lot blooming wildflower wise that time, unless you count woodlands, which we're not really going to go over in this lecture video. And these plants, you should assess your site, see which plants you should grow. So is it wet? Is it medium or basic? Is it dry? You have shade, which is less than 2 hours of sun a day. You have part shade, which is 2 to 6 hours of direct sunlight a day. You have direct sun, full sun, which is more than 6 hours of light, direct sunlight every day. Is it sandy? Is it rocky? Is it clay? Different plants like different things. Choose your site, match your plants to it. Native plants are pretty tough as long as they're matched their site. So there are a lot of different places for you to explore this and get plants. Good online places for you to order plants and seeds are Prairie Moon, Prairie Nursery, OPN Seed has, lots of different seeds. Isle Plants has a lot of different plants. Brownstone Seed is in Tennessee, and you can order lots of different seeds from them. Local Cincinnati area, there's Keystone Flora, Go Natives Now in Lebanon. Being near native nursery, they can do your landscaping and planning for you if you don't have time to do it. Bowyer Farm by Cincinnati Zoo, or also known as the Echo Farm. For a few days every month in the growing season, they have this big event where they will sell a ton of perennials, biennials, shrubs. They got tons of stuff. It's a great place. They're full-sized plants, gallon pots. You really should check it out. It's pretty amazing. Natives in Harmony, they have some very very rare native plants. Absolutely check them out. They do not ship. They are all the way up in Marengo, but they are definitely worth a visit. Very cool. So let's check out how to choose your plants for your site. So Prairie Nursery and Prairie Moon have some very good guides on how to do this. Let's, for example, Prairie Moon. So Prairie Moon plants. You can filter the results by a ton of different things. That's so for me, for example, zone 6, medium soil, full sun. Let's say I want pollinator favorite butterflies, birds, and bees. And I'm not particularly picky on what kind of plant I get in the format, whether it's 3 packs, bare root, potted garden kit. That's a pre-designed one, by the way, or single species trays. So we got tons of different plants here. Echinacea purpurea, purple coneflower, prairie phlox, nodding onion, giant hyssop, yeast hyssop, prairie onion. These are actually semi-shrubs, just so you know. Columbine, common milkweed. Milkweeds should be in every garden, some kind of milkweed. There's milkweeds for just about every type of soil or shade or garden condition. There are shade-loving milkweeds. There are sun-loving milkweeds. There are wet soil-loving milkweeds. There are dry soil-loving milkweeds. Stuff for acidic soil and so forth. There's indigos, woodmint, wild hyacinth, tons of different things. And so you can kind of like browse through here, see what you want. Just so you know, a lot of native plants can get big. For example, prairie dock, cup plant. That flowering spike is probably like 10 feet tall. So you may want to be careful about what you choose. There are also some other plants, like for example, sawtooth sunflower. Spell that for a second. Sawtooth sunflower. It gets big and it gets aggressive. It will take over, especially if your side is a little on the moist side. So you may want to leave that for the people who have larger yards. Well, this will be great for birds and all kinds of things, but again, it gets big. Same thing with Joe Pye weed. I've seen some Joe Pye that gets almost 20 feet tall in the right sites. So keep in mind, there is this filter here by feet is there for a reason. So for example, it's 3 to 4 feet high. So that filters out different kinds of things. Let's check out, and they also have Prairie Moon Nursery also has tons and tons and tons of different seeds. That's really what they specialize in. Hundreds of different types of wildflowers, sedges, grasses, even shrubs, a few shrubs and trees. And they also have quite a few different learning resources that you should absolutely take the time to explore. And they have tons of information. Tool mixes, tools. They said tool mixes for some reason. I don't know why. They have seed mixes, pre-designed seed mixes, which are pretty economical. Starting your garden from seed with a seed mix is, I find, much more economical than choosing the potted planted route, although it does take a lot longer, but it is less work and less money, but it's just a lot more time. And they have all kinds of site conditions, types of mixes. You want your insects, there you go. You hate deer, you hate Bambi, let's go. Pollinators, let's go. You're speed demon, here you go. Anything you want, they got it. They got shade. They got moist shade. They got dry sand. They got unless you're Anakin Skywalker, stay away from that. They got all kinds of seed mix enhancements, all kinds of stuff. So let's check out the shrew. So Prairie Nursery, don't mind the bottom there. Prairie Nursery has custom plant kits, pre-planned gardens, seed mixes, resources and guides. I highly recommend, again, check these guys out. They're fairly similar to Prairie Moon. They specialize more in plants. For example, you can filter it more. For example, for these guys, you can filter it by bloom time. You can filter it by bloom color, benefits, birds, butterflies, pollinators in general, or hummingbirds. Host plant that means for caterpillars, butterflies, and moths. Resistant, soil moisture, dry, medium, moist, wet, full sun, partial shade, clay type, plants and seeds. And if you're wondering what different moisture levels, what that exactly is, what that looks like for your yard, well, Prairie Moon has a pretty helpful guide here. So, for example, so soil moisture, wet, it's soggy or marshy, puddled water most of the year. Medium wet, that's probably what my yard is a lot, medium to medium wet. Excessively wet in winter and spring, so it may puddle water a great deal, but then it dries out later in summer. Especially, you'll have puddled water in spring and fall. Medium dry, medium was mesic. Medium mesic may puddle occasionally, and dry will drain really, really fast, so like on ridges especially. That's Zarek. I recommend you check out all these people. Great. They've put in a lot of work into these websites. It's some absolutely beautiful plants, as you can see down here. So, starting your garden. Method number 1 with plants. If you can't wait at all for your wildflowers and you're willing to spend money and hard work, this method is for you. I would recommend that you choose your site well, because you will not be able to move the plants after you planted them, because most native perennials have very deep roots. And like we see here on the bottom, those roots are about 10 feet deep. And sometimes they can get even deeper than that. They do not need pampering. So no fertilizer. You don't really mulch them too much. You can crowd them if you want. You can really pack them in there, and they will do just fine. In fact, they may even do healthier with the competition, because if they get pampered, they will get too big and they'll collapse and fall over. Of course, kill the grass, kill your lawn, replace it with a plant like this guy, which is coming up in the spring here. Mosses are fine. Mosses are always cool. Try to eliminate the weeds before you plant anything, of course. Just remember, this is more expensive and takes more time, but it is more rewarding uh, being able to like plant that and watch it grow. You have like more control over what grows there, basically. Method two, from seed. This is more economical and it's a lot less work, but it does take a great deal more time. You have less control over what exactly grows. Certain plants, for example, actually want to plant in there from pottings, such as phlox and gentians. Those, they don't have a high germination rate. They're not always the easiest to grow from seed. Um, on the other hand, things like sunflowers and coneflowers, many other stuff like that, they can be quite easy to grow from seed. So there are four basic ways you can do this, and it takes about one growing season because you need to eliminate the seed bank, and that is absolutely critical. Because if you are going to regret it, if the seed bank of weeds comes up along with your wildflowers, and then you'll have the devil's own time trying to get out of them, get those weeds out. So you can smother it with like a tarp, like down here. Smother it for about 6 weeks to 2 months. The vegetation, you mow it short and you smother it, and then you take off the tarp for about 2 weeks and let the seed bank grow, and then you smother it again, and you do that throughout the growing season, on and off cycles of like 6 weeks smother, 2 week let the seed bank grow, 6 weeks smother, and like you'll still get a couple of weed seeds in there, but this will get rid of most. Solarizing is basically the same thing as smothering, but a different concept. Rather than smothering them, you are letting the sun cook them without any escape heat. I guess that was kind of redundant of me. Herbiciding and tilling. You also want to herbicide it, and once everything's dead, you want to like kind of rough it up a little, let the seeds grow, and once a lot of things have started growing again, you herbicide it again. You do that until nothing is left, nothing is growing. Same thing with tilling. You till everything under, wait for things to grow, till it again until nothing grows. And that usually takes about one full growing season. So once you've prepared your site through the summer, hopefully you've already chosen your seed mix. You sow late fall to early winter. Late fall is best. Remember to use broadcast medium because so you can sow your seeds evenly across the site. Mix it usually like 1 part seed to 3 or 4 parts sand or sawdust, what have you, and then hand spread it with maybe a spreader, or maybe you broadcast by hand. You like this feeling of the seed slipping through your fingers, and then you wait. Let those seeds stratify through the winter. Most perennials need, and a lot of biennials and annuals too, they need a period of cold, moist dormancy, or cold, moist conditions, I should say, to remove the dormancy. And that is very well accomplished by sowing the seeds on the ground and letting them lay there through the winter, and then they will come up in the spring, no problem. If you're worried about having to remove the sod, I mean, unless you're tilling, obviously that's going to get rid of the sod. But if you're worried about the dead grass and sod, just mow it short before you smother and solarize or herbicide it, and just keep it short. So just mow it short. Don't worry about like raking it off or whatever. It'll like decay over the winter. Unless you have like a massive amount, it'll be fine. Especially if you're doing just turning like a chunk of your yard, you don't even have to worry about raking off or anything. Just kill the grass, leave it. It'll basically hold the soil together. It's less disturbance for the soil, and it'll kind of protect a lot of the seeds from predation by birds and so forth. And maintenance going forward. So first year you might not get that many blooms, just like annuals and some biennials like black-eyed Susan and tick seed and stuff like that. Your perennials, which are the star attraction of the show, will take over mostly the third year onwards, and they're very long lived and they will self seed, and they'll grow very thick from 30 years. And then they will suppress the weeds. So you really only need to weed like watch the weeds like first and second years, and after that, just kind of glance over it occasionally. Um, for full sun gardens, you do want to mow if you are the kind of person who insists on cleaning up your garden. I suggest you wait until spring, roughly late March, early April, because bees, moths, and butterflies and lots of other types of pollinators, they need a home during the winter, and they have that home in the dead stems, leaf litter, and so forth that is on the ground. And wait until after they have emerged and you're seeing a bunch of insects, and then you can burn or mow or whatever. Once the prairie garden is mature, I suggest you only mow it or burn it like once every about 3 years, to let like insects populations recover between disturbances. If you live near like if you have like a bunch of really prolific trees that constantly seed into your prairie garden, I strongly suggest you burn it every single year, because that will keep out the trees, and it'll be way easier than going in there by hand to remove every single calorie pair or whatever. Although full grown, like well established perennials, they should be able to suppress everything, all the weeds. And so, yeah. So now you have your pollinator garden, and you're attracting all manner of bees, butterflies, and so hummingbirds too. Enjoy. Just remember, um, just kind of water it like the first year until all the plants are established. And after that, you really shouldn't have to bother it too much. I wish you all a wonderful day. Stay strong, stay safe, stay healthy. All of you have a wonderful